Am I in? Am I
Hi,
in?
yes, you are. Hi, Israel. How are you?
I apologize. I've been doing a number of these interviews lately, and everyone's got different technology and different ways of accessing. And this
No, it's
this
a
one
whole new world in terms of technology. I can tell you that.
this was a new one for me.
Yeah, I mean, I do the program live stream, and then it downloads into a podcast, um, and it's kind of a different frontier than the old days when I used to be a talk show host. Everything was very formal, and when the train left the station and you weren't on it, forget it. Now it's a much more casual deal. So,
All right, good. So I'm gonna relax. I'm gonna take
okay,
it easy. And
listen.
thank you. My apologies. My apologies for being late.
Not at all. Don't pay any attention to my millions and millions of listeners. All right. So the book.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. What happened? Hello. Oh no. Are you good? I'm good. I'm in. Oh no. Um, okay. Looks like I don't know. Looks like our host has gone. He's been transported up into the unknown space and place of media. Um, One second, all. Please hang on. I have a feeling. Oh, there we go. They returned him. The aliens brought him back. I'm not hearing you, though.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you. You're
Okay,
good.
so we're fine. All right. So I've introduced your book, your excellent book, and obviously this is very topical right now, given the fact that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is about to meet with President Trump tomorrow. We should get a handle on what is going on with that. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit of background here about the horrendous events of October the 7th of 2023, when Hamas launched that horrible barbaric attack on the state of Israel. How did that happen right under the nose of the IDF? I would love to get an answer to that. I understand it's a complex question, but here you have a sophisticated military, a sophisticated intelligence organization. I mean, if you believe the anti-Semites, the Mossad runs the world, and they certainly are powerful. How did they let this happen? This horrendous massacre right under their noses.
Charles, the question that you're asking is on the tip of the tongue of just about every person that I have talked to throughout my travels in Canada, in the United States, in Europe, in Australia, in Asia, I get around, and of course in Israel. And it's actually what prompted me to write this book, because this book is about 7 observations that I made that are observations in response to the question of how. I'm not saying answers because I don't know the answers. None of us know the answers today. We can make presumptions. I posit 7 observations that I have made, and that's what, sorry, it's right here. That's what the book is about.
I don't know. So
And
let's go
yeah,
through it.
so
What I interrupt?
I could tell you what the 7 observations are, if you like. I could
I
list
would
them
like
off.
that. Yeah, please.
All right. So, you know, when the morning that I started writing the book, I have to explain to you sort of the psychological state I was in. I
Hmm.
was in Israel because my son is in the IDF and he was called into active service.
Hmm.
And my wife and I flew to Israel because we just needed to go. We needed to go. The hate, the anti-Semitism, the protests, we were fearful, we felt unsafe, and we felt betrayed. And coming to Israel, we felt, I can't explain to you the envelope of love that we felt when we walked down the Tayelet in Tel Aviv. And we rented an apartment right by the Mediterranean, a beautiful place. And we decided we would spend some time in Israel because, of course, like I said, we were very concerned about our son. But we also wanted to do something. We wanted to help. And so we made several trips to the Tel Shemer Hospital to speak with young men and women who were caught in the crossfire of October 7, who lost legs and arms and horrible disfigurement. And we went there, and it was uncomfortable. It was not comfortable to be there, but we had to do it. We went to speak with these young people, to bring them sandwiches, to bring them hope. They actually gave us hope. These kids are unbelievable. They actually comforted us. And the other thing that I did in kind of just trying to understand it is I have many friends in the IDF, and some of them very highly placed. Mm-hmm. And I got permission to go to the border of Gaza. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to walk from the border of Gaza along the path that the terrorists took. And I came onto Be'eri. And when I got to Be'eri and I saw the homes and I saw the bullet holes and I saw the blood stains, it was a lot to take. But I'll tell you the one thing that just was too much. There's a tent. There's a green tent that's built just on the outskirts, just right there in someone's backyard, on a park, a child's park. And that green tent, you've got rabbis and you've got anthropologists and you've got doctors. And what are they doing? They're sifting through ashes and they're testing them for DNA, because God forbid a Jew should be buried with the terrorists who killed them. And it was too much for me. When I saw this, I broke down, Charles, I'll tell you. And I went home. I went back to our apartment in Tel Aviv, and it was a lot that day. And I went to sleep, and I woke up with a start about 4 a.m. I was in a cold sweat, and I sat there in front of my computer, and I just didn't know how to let it all out. And I wrote the words, the letters HOW on my screen. And I sat there and I screamed and I cried. And I said, God, how? How did this happen? How could this have happened? And I started to journalize, and I started to do a little mind mapping, and I started to try to calm myself down by coming up with ideas. And I drew on my 30 years of experience in business and in academia and my studies in Middle East and politics to try to just capture something. And what I realized, Charles, was that the answer of how is not in a vacuum. It is not a simple answer. It is 75 years in the making. And I came up with the following observations because I told you I would tell you exactly what they were. So I'm going to list them off right now. But you'll have to read the book, and your listeners and your viewers will have to read the book to really get into the detail. I can't do this on one foot. So first of all, I thought about Russia and the United States in their East-West battle for dominance, how these two powers used the world as their pawns and out of this East-West battle came ideologies and came structures and came loyalties and disloyalties to countries who were used. And through this 75 years of this twisting and turning and this battle came October 7th. And I explain in my book exactly how that happened, and I draw the line and the journey of how that happened. The next thing I came up with was non-state terror proxies. These are organizations, some of them as big as countries. Hezbollah at the time had 100,000 troops amassed at the border in Lebanon. These are not countries. These are not sovereign entities. Hamas, thousands and thousands and thousands, 25,000 terrorists. In Syria, it's all over the place. Houthis in Yemen. all the way 1,800 miles away, non-state terror proxies. And who are these a proxy of? Iran.
Persia. Yep.
Iran, the regime in Iran. And if you want to go and follow all the proxies and all the money and all the funding and all the ideology, you take it right to Iran. The third is the funding of terrorism. $2 billion in aid money pours annually into the Gaza Strip, or it did. And the biggest scam of all is UNRWA. And what did they do, UNRWA, with the $1.6 billion they collected from Americans, American taxpayers, Canadian taxpayers? I'm paying tax so that my son can be in Gaza protecting a humanitarian corridor so that Gazans can be taken care of, protecting this corridor, this convoy of trucks, so that because it's being attacked every day and taken over by Hamas. And my son is there doing the humanitarian work that is required to give these people so that they have sustenance, while my country is spending money on the very people who are hunting and trying to kill my son. How bizarre that my tax dollars are going into that. But the funding of terrorism is really a subject matter that'll make you sick to your stomach. That you are funding terrorism, Charles.
No,
your neighbor is funding terrorism. Not knowingly, but through the complacency, through the stupidity, through the dissonance of the useful idiots that have been running our governments, and allowing these funds to flow through from everywhere, including, by the way, Israel allowed a lot of money from Qatar. They made a deal with the devil. It was called prosperity for peace. And many times Hamas had come into the crossfires of Israel, and Israel had to give up its defense because of its prosperity for peace policy. The Palestinian, this is number 4, the Palestinian refugee crisis. I call it in my book the non-Palestinian refugee crisis, because there is not a Palestinian refugee crisis by the very definition of the term refugees. There is no Palestinian refugee crisis. This is an invention of the UN. It's an invention of UNRWA to perpetuate the victimization of Palestinians. What about the Jewish refugees in 1948? Over 850,000 Jews, nearly 1 million Jews, were threatened and many of them killed, and many of them were kicked out of their countries that they had been there for generations, in Iraq and Iran and in Syria, to punish.
They were absorbed by Israel immediately,
but they were refugees. The UN didn't establish something for them.
Let me just comment on that one briefly. I mean, they were absorbed by Israel right at the time of independence, when Israel really had nothing. I mean, they had no money, they had no resources, and they set up tents and they absorbed this population. And this is native.
Not exactly in 1948, but between 1948 and 1975 was that period of time where 800. But the Palestinians, and this is what people don't want to hear, many of them left on their own accord. When the Arab nations lined up around Israel and said, we're going to annihilate the Jewish people, they told people who lived there, leave your homes, go to this place called Gaza. We're going to take care of you. When we defeat the Jews and drive them into the sea, you can go back. Of course, we all know what happened. That did not happen.
And also, I think the Israelis also did drive a lot of them out. But putting that aside,
yes,
the fact of the matter is that
there's actually some great literature on that, and there's a great book, The Promised Land, that talks about that. And I have to tell you, yes, it was a time of war, Charles. It was a time of war.
No, I'm not saying it to disparage, but I just would like to add as a little extra piece here that the native Arab Jewish population that became that settled in Israel. And these are people who lived in places like Iraq even before Islam, in fact, going all the way back to the days of Ezra, that they are, what you may call indigenous, I suppose, since that's a popular word on the left. The point is that Israel is not all European Jews. It's about half and half, and a lot of them have at this point intermarried. Speaking as a personal anecdote, my own cousin has 4 kids. Out of the 4, 3 of them married Mizrahi spouses. That's very typical in Israel. It's not all, from Europe. Not that there'd be anything wrong if it were, because after all, the left is very much in favor of immigration. Going back to your points.
Well, let me finish. I got 3 more for you. Okay.
Please.
All right. So we talked about the Palestinian refugee crisis, which in my book shows a very well cited and researched argument to show you that there is no Palestinian refugee crisis. And I don't mean to be controversial, but if you read the book, you'll find out exactly why I say that. Extremely well cited. This is not my opinion. I'm taking much of what I do from the UN. Okay, number 5 observation that I posit that is how October 7th happened, and that is the syllabus of hate. It's what I call the syllabus of hate. For many decades now, we have been catering to a global jihad that has been infiltrating communities all over the world, creating a syllabus of hate on our university campuses, in our communities. And I'm not being, here paranoid or anything, because we've seen it. We've seen it. How do you think that these encampments and these protests, how do you think they happened overnight on October 8th? Suddenly there was
a lot of money pouring in from Qatar. And also, this is something that a lot of people, including a lot of liberals in my own family, in my own circles, people on the left, Jewish liberals, were shocked over.
Charles, there are Jewish liberals.
Oh, hell, please. You and I both know it. The thing is that I wasn't at all shocked by it. To me, I've been talking about this for a decade, that the infiltration by the Islamic left, by the Islamists, and their sort of, to use the term, collusion, if you will, with the American left, it has to do with a demonization of Israel on 2 counts, I think. The first is that Israel is capitalist. It's the startup nation. It's a nation of opportunity. It's a nation where people can make something of themselves and they can advance. And
pure envy.
And there's nothing the left despises more than that. And the second is that Israel is Jewish. Even the most secular Israeli, it still has a certain spiritual mission that is understood almost inherently by the people of Israel, regardless of their level of observance, and that is the other demon for the left, that they despise that. They want to replace that with their own secular utopian fantasy. So it was very easy for the Islamists to market this for them and to bring them into this point of view.
And the point in my book, Charles, that I make is that as long as this syllabus of hate exists, there is going to be violence. There is going to be only one way that we can counter the syllabus of hate, and that is with violence. Unfortunately, because I am not a violent person, I am very much a liberal centrist if I had to put myself along the spectrum.
Right.
And this is what pains me personally more than anything else. We must deal with the education of the next generation, of the generation of children. Okay, number 6, Israel's political system. Israel's political system is not serving its masters. It was in 1948, we had a more homogeneous society, and we adopted a proportional representation based on the British system of democracy. But today, in 2025, we're very much a heterogeneous society, and the system is proportional representation. And the fact that Israel does not have a constitution, and the fact that there isn't the same checks and balances that are in other successful democracies, Israel's democratic system, their electoral process, does not meet the needs of the people and puts the minority interest fringe parties in power. And this has to stop, because this is creating, and this is my seventh point and perhaps my most important point, and it's creating Jewish disunity. Israel was at a level of Jewish disunity never before seen since 1948. We had demonstrations, and I have to tell you, to the credit of Israel and the democracy in Israel, that people can demonstrate in the streets. They can demonstrate peacefully in the streets without fear of being imprisoned and without fear of the government, coming into their homes and taking them away. No, we are a very, very much a society of free conversation, of freedom of speech. We very much hold to that. But Jews were divided, and this is not the way of the land. And when Moses brought the people to the land of Israel, he warned the Israelites. He said one thing: if you do not respect each other, if you are divided, your enemies will come and they will attack you and they will achieve victory. But if you follow the way of the land in how you treat each other, then your enemies will never penetrate. Our enemies were watching, Charles. They were watching, and they saw the disunity over time.
I recall just before the attack, that maybe a year before, leading up to it, the disunity in Israel was really disturbing and obvious. And
it was.
Israel has held together during other times of stress because of the external threat and because people recognize that, they learned the lesson of the destruction of the temple when you had people break apart and literally have a civil war while the Romans basically went in and picked up the pieces. But yet you mentioned, I think, a very good idea, which is developing a constitution and maybe a strong presidency like we have in the United States. I mean, look at Donald Trump. He was just elected with a popular vote and electoral college. And that while you still have this dissension and people don't like him, it's something that people accept and that he's able to now function, fortunately so far.
We definitely need a antidote to the future and the aftermath of October 7th. And I hope that people pick up my book, read my book, and listen to what I am recommending, because the wake-up call is exactly that. The wake-up call.
I mean, it would be a very contentious thing to put together a constitution because there are so many issues like the religious question and
not really, Charles.
No? Okay.
Israel has 14 basic laws, and we have developed those basic laws. The last law that was introduced 4 years ago to call the nationalism of Israel the Jewish state, to identify it formally as a Jewish state. We have basic laws. Those basic laws are in place of constitution. The challenge is that those basic laws can be altered, modified, changed, added with a majority vote. Whereas in other democratic institutions and much more healthier, it requires much more than that to change anything. So the problem is that Israel does not have a constitution, and it would take a majority vote of the Knesset to come in to establish that we need a constitution, but you need more than that. You need a second chamber. You need a separation between the presidency, or rather the prime ministerialship, and the parties, and you need to get away from this proportional representation where we have a slate of candidates that are chosen not for their abilities, but rather for their for the number of votes that they receive and for their negotiating skills at the table to get a seat
and their ability to finagle
government. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. People.
On the one hand, you have like the Arab Party, on the other hand, you have radical, religious groups. I mean, I think that you're quite right. I mean, it certainly would rein in some of the excesses of the judiciary, which is a major problem.
Yeah, but don't make any mistake about it, because I spend a lot of time with Israel, and we are the lovers of life, and Israel is a village, and people care deeply about each other. I just think that we need some correction. We need some correction to a political process that is in badly need of some changes. And we need a constitution, and we have to be very careful. And Israel should, I hope in the aftermath of this, I hope that people recognize that the electoral system doesn't work for Israel anymore, that it needs to be changed. And I hope, and many countries, by the way, have changed their electoral systems as their society has changed. This is nothing new. Right. And I hope that the Jewish disunity that has happened, and that I believe is one of the major observations I've made of how this actually happened, is that people take that to heart, because we are a people. I'll walk down the street, you'll see people argue with each other, and then someone will stumble on a curb and fall. You'll get 20 people that will run to that person, and you've got a doctor, and you got someone. Did you call this person? Suddenly, everyone just drops what they have. It is unfortunate that person fell, but it warms my heart to see, because we are a village. I have to tell you, my son tells me he's a lone soldier. Mm-hmm. Okay, Charles, and he says to me, Abba, which in Hebrew is dad. Don't call me a lone soldier. I am not a lone soldier. Every mother in Israel is feeding me. Every father in Israel is looking out for me. He says, don't worry, I'm well taken care of. And that is Israel. Don't even think for a moment, anyone who's listening here, for all of our problems and the chaos and the issues. And I talk about these problems because I'm a balanced, objective person, and I'm a political scientist at heart. And I talk about these things because I understand what the antidote is. But don't even for a moment think that Israel is this chaotic, unsafe place to be. Israel is love, and it's unified.
That's why they
must come to Israel. Everyone who's listening to this, you must come to Israel and experience it and live it for yourself. Come to the village.
And the Israeli people are very loyal to Israel, and which is why the enemy has never been able to infiltrate the inner circles of Israeli society like we have done.
Not until recently. It's unfortunate, but what happened here on October 7th took 2 years to build up. This is. You're talking about
to get back to our original subject. And by the way, your book is wonderful. I'm looking forward to reading it.
Thank you, Charles.
The Wake Up Call: Global Jihad and the Rise of Antisemitism in a World Gone Mad. It is available as a paperback on Amazon.com.
It's also available in as an ebook, and it's also available as an audiobook, and it's available now. We just released the hardcover copy.
Excellent. So you've got all the bases covered. What happened, though? How did they do this under Israel's nose? I mean, I'm talking practical here. I want to know. I have to roll over this. I mean, not that I'm here sitting in comfort of Boston, so it's easy for me to say, but somebody really screwed up here. What happened?
Well, it's not just somebody. It's a policy. There's two major reasons, and I talk about it in the Wake Up Call. And first of all, Israel pursued a policy of prosperity for peace, which required them to compromise themselves and turn a blind eye. I don't think anyone ever expected Hamas to build up the way they were building up, but they were told in no uncertain terms by the U.S., if you do not allow this to happen, if you do not allow unbridled humanitarian aid to cross into the border, we will stop sending you arms. We will stop. They held them hostage. There is a manipulation of the American people not in the American people, my apologies, I'm sorry, but the former United States government was playing both sides, trying to dance at two weddings, and manipulated and managed. And this is a problem. There's a major problem. We are a sovereign nation. Israel is a sovereign nation, and yet we are undermined by some codependent relationship, then that has to stop. And I believe that the pursuit of the peace for prosperity compromise was Israel made a terrible misjudgment, a short misjudgment, and allowed for the Biden administration. I want to tell you something, and I'm not a very political person, but I hold the Biden administration directly responsible for starting their funding again to Iran. They funded Iran, funding of terrorism, forcing them not to inspect goods. Israel had a very strict policy of inspecting everything coming in. We couldn't inspect goods. We trusted in the UN. We trusted in the United Nations.
When Gaza already had fired thousands of missiles into Israel, and it was kind of a known fact that Gaza, which was handed over to the Palestinian Authority on a silver platter in 1995 by Ariel.
No, in 2015, Charles.
Thank you. I think it was 2005, wasn't it?
No, 2000, and yes, I'm sorry. My apologies. Sorry, no, 2005. Okay.
And
And
handed over with money pouring in from all over the world, including the United States. They had every opportunity to create a peaceful, sovereign.
they took that money. They created over 300 miles of tunnels. Do you know how many miles of tunnels exist in Paris? 147 miles. Do you know how many miles of tunnels exist in Manhattan? Far less than 300.
It raises a question in my mind: how many tunnels are there now?
It's a game of whack-a-mole. That's how my son describes it.
It takes years to get rid of it.
This is, listen, Trump's idea of moving everybody out so that we can clean up the mess. This is a good idea. It's a practical idea. And unfortunately, once again, we're caught in this compromise that we have to make for a very bad deal that's on the table. A very bad.
Let's talk about that, because first of all, I mean, I don't think it's a terrible deal, because once they get the hostages out, assuming that they do, then the Palestinian side has lost their leverage, and Israel could go in and blast them to hell.
But they are using this to further humiliate, dehumanize. Listen, Charles, we're getting our hostages out. And Israel, the Israeli people, the Jewish people, first and foremost, life is
that's right. It shows
preservation of life is everything, and we will not.
It's not good PR for them to show that they've held these people, and this is how. I mean,
they don't care.
I know they don't care, but the point is, I don't think that we need to.
There's organizations who are out there right now today protesting, pro-Hamas calling them resistance fighters, feminists.
Well, I want to get into that subject separately, because they've always said that. I mean, I had on an Arabist on my program who I said, look, they're firing missiles, the terror tunnels, the gas balloons. And he said, oh, no, that's resistance. Resistance? First of all, obviously, Gaza was completely out of the control of the Palestinians. What are they resisting? But putting that aside, the fact is that they are now at a point, get my train of thought here, that Trump is saying two things here. First of all, he's saying, get them out and have them transferred to the Sinai or to Jordan, and which I think the Sinai would be a wonderful potential place for a Palestinian state outside of Israel. And if anybody can do it, it's Trump. Look what he just did to the president of Mexico and Canada. He got them to completely capitulate.
Listen, I'm in Canada, by the way.
Okay, then you know what I'm talking about. They have completely capitulated in the face of Trump's using leverage and economic pressure. Now they're doing everything Trump's asked them to do. Same thing with Panama now. Rubio is there. They're shutting down the Chinese bases at the Panama Canal. I'm just saying that if anybody can do this, it's Trump.
I think the guy he walks the talk, okay, and he's doing what he said he would do, and he's no nonsense, and we need that right now, because this fuddling of your previous administration, who tries to create moral equivalency and dancing at two weddings and dancing and being two-sided, that doesn't work anymore. We can't can I say, okay, we can't bullshit anymore, okay? We got to deal with it. But I want to talk about the current ceasefire and hostage deal. We both know that it's a very bad. We're negotiating, Charles. We're negotiating with terrorists. We're negotiating with the lovers of death. We're negotiating. Look who we're negotiating with. We're negotiating with freaking animals who just want to blow themselves up. Okay,
and that they're teaching that kind of hatred to their children. I saw comments from one of the release.
So there's no good faith actors in any of this.
No. Which gets me to the second part of Trump's proposal, which is, I think, problematic, and that is that he wants to bring in the Abraham Accords nations like the United Arab Emirates, maybe Saudi Arabia if it joins, to govern Gaza and to pour money into Gaza to create a beautiful, beautiful estates and hotels and resorts.
I think it's an interesting proposition, because many of these countries who have achieved wealth, okay, my son says something, and I thought it was very funny and a little bit controversial, but I'm going to say it anyways. So don't, no one come after me.
Go for it.
Eitan says to me, he says, Abba, he says, there's no Allah when you own a Bugatti. And it just, I got to tell you, it just made, I got to quote my son on this because it makes me very, it made me very laugh. It laugh a lot, made me very laugh. Okay. It really, really made me chuckle because it is true, right? That we want to believe that anyways. We want to believe that.
I'm not sure. I might push back a little bit.
I hear you. I hear you.
All it'll take is one bomb in that beautiful, beautiful resort, and the Hamas will come back out of the woodwork.
Well, no, I think there has to be some very critical lines drawn over here. Hamas, the Gaza Strip has to be completely demilitarized, and I talk about this in the wake-up call. That is a non-negotiable, and there must be a democratic institution, and civil liberties must be restored to the people. And most importantly, the syllabus of hate needs to cease and desist. There must be for a period of time, an approved educational protocol, and there must be a legislative definition of hate. And we're going to have to come down hard on the criminals over there. And they are criminals. They are murderers, rapists, thieves, any way you cut it. And we got to come down on them, and we've got to show, and there cannot be any mercy to that. I'm sorry. There is no compromise to that. We will rebuild. We should rebuild it. It is a strip of land. It is a beautiful, the Mediterranean.
Yeah, it's like the Riviera.
It could be.
I think we might be overreaching if we think we're going to get rid of the syllabus of hate in that country. I'm telling you, of course, but I don't know. I mean, I've heard people say, and I'm not here to endorse this at all, but really the only solution to the Gaza issue is that the Arabs have to go, because they're not going to change. It's like dealing with, I'm sorry to use a derogatory term here, and I don't mean it otherwise, but it's like a rabid dog. You can't cure it. It has to be shot. And I'm not. I'm not calling anybody to be shot.
My emotions.
They can't be there unless Israel is not going to have a peaceful border there.
Charles, my emotions agree with you. My anger agrees with you. I've seen the videos. I've watched everything that happened. And I would say to you, in this moment of us talking about this, that it's easy for me to agree with you. But my moral compass can't agree with you.
Well, but I'm not saying that. I'm repeating what other people have said. I actually don't.
I hear you, and I hear other people. But ultimately,
and Charles, I'm not saying anybody should be killed. I'm saying
from history. I want to make
an expulsion. That's all.
I want to make a very clear point here.
Yeah,
we know historically, if we look at the world for the last 5,000 years, it never fails. The cycles never fail us. Hate, violence is not a long-term strategy. Violence will always turn the tide. At some point, you get build up a resistance.
Well, it can be done humanely and not violently.
But the only long-term solution, here to protect society from itself and to protect lives is somehow finding a way to legislate peace, love, and coexistence and respect. Ultimately, that is, and I am. Call me naive. I have to tell you, I've written the
right too. But President Eisenhower once said, "You can't legislate a man's heart."
Look at my son. I come back to Eitan because he is an active IDF officer, and he is, and he says to me, better that their mothers cry at their children's graves than our mothers cry at ours. It's a very difficult reality for us to deal with, and this is true. Better that we unfortunately, and Golda Meir said it. Golda Meir said she does not blame the Arabs for the wars against Israel. She blames them for turning our young people, our young boys, into killers by going ahead and being forced. And I write a chapter in the wake-up call called The Impossible Situation. It's a very interesting chapter where I list a number of different things. And I'd like to I'd like to tell you about some of those things that I list if I can. And I talk about 10 points that are possible, the impossible situation that Israel has been put into. And they are as follows. Number one, Israel values life, Hamas values death. Number two, there is no clear delineation between military and innocent civilians in the Gaza Strip. The population is radicalized under a theocratic, violent regime, and the majority of people in Gaza demand and celebrate the total destruction of Israel. This is the impossible situation we're in. Number three, Hamas uses civilians as human shields. They hide underneath hospitals. They hide in schools. They put their tunnels and all of their missile launchers in these places. Number four, Hamas is a direct proxy of Iran. You want to get rid of Hamas? You got to get rid of Iran. They got to be taken out, Charles. That's it. You want to talk tough over here? I'll talk tough about Iran, because the Iranian regime is a snake that hides in the rocks and controls much of the terror that's out there. Okay, number five, Hamas violates every human rights abuse, and yet it is Israel that is pinned constantly under a microscope and charged with these violations. Number six, Israel is in a state of constant self-defense. If the Jewish state does not dismantle the terror and defend itself, it will be destroyed and all of its citizens murdered. Number seven, anything the Jewish state does is highly scrutinized and almost always in a negative light. That narrative of the media, of the wokeness, of the left, of the manipulation under the guise of humanitarian must cease and desist.
Especially
Number eight, Hamas plays on the Western world's naivety and does so to further their agenda. They leverage our moral compass for their own evilness. Number nine, Israel recognizes that bribing peace for prosperity did not work. Western societies continue to make this underestimation. Arab countries knowingly and continually allow for the flow of goods that will arm Hamas. That is why I say in my book, A World Gone Mad, because MAD stands for mutually assured destruction, a concept that we all know between the East and the West battle that worked. As long as you've got enough arms that you can threaten their existence, no one will push the red button. That leverage and that concept does not apply with the lovers of death. There is no MAD. There is no mutually assured destruction. These people are bent entirely on death. And how do you deal with that? That is what I mean by an impossible situation. Okay, number 10. What is the impossible situation that Israel is in today? Israel is highly dependent on the United States. The majority of decision-making regarding military response or the aftermath of this war will be highly influenced by whether the U.S. allows or disallows certain plans. I am really, really happy that Trump has made it back into power. I am not happy about the whole tariff situation that's going on, but I'll let people who are smarter than me deal with that. Mm-hmm. But so fortunately, perhaps for the next 4 years, Israel's going to be in a good situation. But what happens when the next democratic liberals come to the table and decide that they know better and they know what to do? Israel is a sovereign nation. We should not ever be put in a position where we need to compromise our security or our survival to the whims of the next president. And somehow that partnership must cease from being co-dependent, and we must exist independently aside and outside of that influence. And that is the impossible situation that Israel finds itself in.
There we go. Okay. Yes, I agree. Israel is a sovereign nation. They can't be pushed around by anyone, including the United States.
It's not feasible. It's not practical. No, it doesn't work.
It'd be good if Israel weaned itself away from American aid too, but that's another subject. As long as Israel has military needs, and
yes, but Israel is a stalwart for democracy and for the U.S. in the region. There isn't another place. So the U.S. should be paying for that.
I agree, but I think that Israel, it's actually, I mean, not to get into a big subject, but it's not in America's interest. Israel has its own interests, its own sovereignty. It does whatever it needs to do to help ensure that, including work on an international level, and I totally support that. The Trump executive orders that he signed in the first day of his tenure included cutting all funds to UNRWA, thank God. I don't know how it is that Biden had continued that, especially after the attack.
Especially not after the attack, Charles, but especially after Israel showed, without any question, evidence of UNRWA employees that were involved in the October 7th attack. They named 12 employees. Now, I got to tell you what these people get paid. UNRWA's CEO gets paid over $750,000. CEOs of profitable corporations. The U.S. president doesn't get more than $400,000. This schmuck's getting $750,000 a year. It's big business. Do you know what people get paid in UNRWA? They get paid $236,000 in a place where the top salaries of those people are $10,000 for the year, $40,000 if you're lucky.
The two guys who are head of Hamas are worth each $2 billion each.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to go there, but I will tell you that, I don't think they can spend their, the one thing is a dangerous job. They're not going to spend their pensions. But yes, Sinwar had millions of dollars packed away, and they all had big money packed away. And where were they? They were investing in Western real estate and technologies, and this is like the irony of it all is that they
pushing it away from
to America, but not when it comes to my investment.
Now, of all of those executive orders, all of which I completely agree with, and it was about time. There's one that has been a little controversial among some liberals, and so I want to ask you about it. That ended the embargo on Judea and Samaria and the settlements, what generally is called the West Bank, quote unquote, and that there's some concern among liberals that I talk to that this means a green light to some of the more excessive aspects of those settlers with regard to their Arab neighbors.
Okay, Charles, I'm going to answer that. I'm going to tell you a couple of things, right? First of all, remember. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm listening.
Okay, first of all, remember, I told you I'm a bit of a liberal centrist and I'm a humanist, and I told you the violence, I don't like it. But you know what pisses me off when I'm in Israel? When I'm told that I need a license to build a house somewhere. As a Jew, I'm discriminated against. If I want to build a house in Ramallah and call it my home, actually, it's the real estate's much more reasonable over there. Why couldn't I do that? Why couldn't I build a? No, I can't do that. That pisses me off. I think that is discriminatory, and I should file a human rights complaint for not being able to do that. Of course, my wife wouldn't agree with doing it. I got to tell you, my kids would think I was crazy, but the point is just to prove a point.
But Jews should be able to live in any city and town.
Exactly. Anyone should. Now, let me tell you something about Judea and Samaria. Okay. Yeah. First of all, you have to understand the historical context of Judea and Samaria and how Judea and Samaria came to be, right? So that's another story for another time. But the point is that after the death of King Solomon, okay, and after his son, there was some disagreement amongst his sons, and eventually the country split and was divided. And of course, that was the beginning of the downfall of Israel. But that we've talked about that in Jewish disunity. When people think about Judea and Samaria, they really got to go to Israel to understand it, because it's not like okay, Gaza has a border around it, right? So there's Israel and then there's Gaza. It's easy. It's a defendable border. It's a defensible border. Judea and Samaria is like a winding road through Israel. Okay,
it's the heart of Israel.
It's so difficult to imagine when you drive through Israel. You can drive right up against sort of the walls that protect Israelis from the several terrible incidents that have happened, but it winds through Israel. There's no consistency in it. Okay, we need to. What happened after 1948? First of all these Arab nations attacked us, and we ended up with the UN partition agreement of 1948 that established the borders of Israel, which didn't make a lot of sense because half of Jerusalem, including the old city and the holy sites of the Jewish people, were considered part of Jordan. Now, keep in mind also that in 1967, when Israel miraculously was victorious in taking over finally all of Jerusalem, it was a dump. Okay. In all those years, Jordan did nothing to improve the lives of these citizens. Jordan did nothing to preserve the historic. Do you know that Israel is the only country in thousands of years since they were last in control of the land? And you know, Israel, the Jewish people are indigenous to Israel.
Of course.
Other thing, do you know that they're the only that we have restored all religious sites, all sites for Jews, for Muslims, for Christians? If you ever walk, really, it's the most phenomenal thing to walk into the gates of the old city of Jerusalem.
Oh no, I've been there.
You see them all, and Israel protects them. We protect all of our religious cousins and different religions. We protect them. But here's the thing. We took over the Golan Heights. Why? Because Syria kept on attacking us. They had the high position. They kept on lobbing bombs on the people down below.
Yeah, exactly.
What can you do? Every country, no one talks about countries who create barriers to protect their sovereignty, right? But the thing is about Israel, of course, is discriminated and under a microscope, and people try to find fault with everything. Israel does things strategically. They have done things strategically. They have not annexed these lands for international reasons and also practical reasons, because that would offset the demographic balance of Israel in ways that would be unacceptable for the democracy. So it's a very tight situation. I talk about it again in the impossible situation that Israel's in. But the idea of calling it the West Bank or the occupied territories is an insult. It's abusive. It's discriminatory. And it's outright, dehumanizes Israel and places Israel right away into a position as a, as a country that is actually.
It's really part of the propaganda, and I've seen maps.
It's part of the evil narrative out there. Judea and Samaria is Judea and Samaria.
That's the generic name for it. Has been for thousands of years.
That's right.
I saw a map recently of Israel before the '67 war, and the region was called West Jordan.
Right.
East Jordan. Yeah, West Jordan. So I mean, this whole thing is really made up.
The media. The media comes up with these names, and people like to use language that at the end of the day is there for one reason. It's to detract from what the real reason is of why they're using these names.
To delegitimize.
I'm very much in favor of you know what? He wants to name the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. He's got his reasons for it. Good luck. He wants Panama, whatever. He wants Greenland. But I'm very much in favor. It's Judea and Samaria. Call the land by what it is. That is what it is. That's been known in the Bible.
The other is an agenda to delegitimize. I agree with that. Even the word Palestine is a delegitimizing of Israel. Israel declared its name as Israel upon independence in the same way that Rhodesia became known as Zimbabwe. It's just it's a term that was used at the moment of independence, and that the term Palestinian used to describe Jews. I mean, my great aunt had a big coffee table book with the big word Palestine across it. And then under was the land of Israel inscribed. It's just, it's a Jewish term, actually. I mean, that they've expropriated. Anyways, Israel, listen, God willing, you're doing God's work here. Great book. I'm looking forward to reading it. I'll have you back. Maybe we could talk as I read. And I urge others to do as well. Israel, let my listeners know how and where they can get your book.
Absolutely. First of all, I want to tell you that you can go to israelellis.com and learn all about me and learn about who I am and the books I've written, as well as the businesses they operate, and get to know me. And please register for my Substack articles and register on our account. Please register so that we can be in touch with you. And the wake-up call was all about creating conversation like we're having today. Charles, we've had a wonderful conversation today. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate this. And the other thing is that you can buy the book on Amazon. Now, here's something that's recently happened. Talk about censorship and the betrayal of the Jewish people and everything. Amazon recently has disallowed the marketing of any books that relate to 10/7. And I've had publishers come to me. And this is what they've said. The events of 10/7 are still being debated. Really?
Amazon's very tricky in that way. And they disallowed my marketing, my book, which is called The Anti-Semitic Imagination.
So then you understand what I'm saying. So I'm asking people, this is what I'm asking people to do. We're not selling the book directly. We want you to buy it from Amazon. And we want, and I mean, the Gonoffs are probably taking all the money anyways, but listen, we want you to buy, and we want you, when you get your book, you got to do me a favor. Okay. This is not a money maker for me. It doesn't, thank God, I don't need to worry about that. This is about a purpose. It's about a calling. It's about a message that I'm sending out there to people. I want them to understand a well-researched, well-cited, extremely well-footnoted document that will provide people with the education, the understanding, the background, and also to provide comfort to those of you out there who feel the pain and have been isolated. That's what the book is. Please, please review the book. Review the book on Amazon. I need you to do that because that's the only thing that's going to counter their marketing censorship. They are silencing us like other. It's bizarre. You wouldn't know about the betrayal unless you were inside the loop.
It's an algorithm thing. I've been dealing with it for years. It's
Amazon.com.
I think it's going to change under Trump, by the way.
Sorry?
I think it's going to change under Trump. This
Sure, everyone's changing. Trump came to power. You had the guy from Facebook. Everyone's running to the emperor. They all
of a sudden they're like bowing there when in fact they go zzz, zzz, zzz,
they said on Facebook they actually came out with a statement that from the river to the sea is not a hateful comment. From the river to the sea, what does it mean? It means we're going to push the Jews from the river right into the sea, everything in between. It's called genocide. They want to murder all the Jewish people.
And the sad thing is that some of my Jewish friends had children that were part of that. But that's another subject.
But you know what? I got to tell you. So Zuckerberg, he comes out with this and he says, no, it's not hateful contact. We don't DEI, we support this, we support that. Trump gets to power and he's there sitting beside Trump, sitting beside the king. I hope he's got good knee pads on because his knees are going to get scraped. I'm really worried about the boy.
Capitulation on their part. All right, Israel.
Get the book. Okay,
get the book.
By Israel Ellis, Global Jihad and the Rise of Anti-Semitism in a World Gone Mad. You won't be disappointed. It'll really answer a lot of the questions. It'll answer the observations. Please, let's create discussion. Get in touch with me. Get in touch at israelellis.com. Let me know what you think of the book, how you want. And if you want me to come and speak to your church, to your synagogue, to your community, to your campus where your children are students, I want to do that. Please organize an event. I don't charge any money for it. I come at my own expense because I want to spread the message. I want to answer the questions. I want to dispel the lies. I'm sick and tired of the narrative, of the untruths. And thankfully, I can afford to do that. So I want to go out there and I want to make sure that the message is very, very clear, that people understand exactly what the Jewish state is going through, what Jewish people are going through, what the lovers of life are going through. We, in America, in Canada, and all free places, we need to fight the global jihad. We need to make sure that it stops because you know what? And Charles, I'll say this too. January 1st in New Orleans did not just happen by a lone wolf and a coincidental attack of someone going crazy. No, that is exactly what jihadism is about. That is exactly what is coming directly from the Iranian regime, and that's got to be stopped. We got to see. You got to understand it, but to stop it, you have to understand, and that's why you got to read the wake up call.
All right, Israel, you're a truth teller. And you're making a great contribution to the Jewish people and therefore the people of the world. So thank you for what you're doing. And
thank you, Charles.
It's been a pleasure having you.